Those 2 hours I was on the field was my comfort zone, and where I knew that I could be my best at and didn't have to worry about anything else. So the worst of the worst good things could be going on in life, and it never distracted anything I had going on the field.
Shutting that door, Patrick, so when the kids come home, they don't come in here screaming, Shawne Merriman's on the podcast. Dad, please, can I say what's up? Can I get an autograph?
You know what's funny about that, man, is because I got my son is 12, and he plays quarterback, he plays football and shit, and so you don't think that all that is a big deal till you have kids, right? Like, so I think back when I was playing, and I'm like going to, before the games, you take the fans and you throw in a football, you bring somebody's kid on the field and kind of play catch with them, or like that shit is a big deal. You don't understand, because I didn't have a kid then, and so you don't know how important that is, because for them it's everything. Like to my son, I'm just like, Dad, like they don't care, but if he meets you or meet a guy that's playing and he's been watching, it's a whole different ballgame.
It's everything, bro. It's so awesome. My son being able to watch me play growing up. He's just a youngster, but really he was born and I started my NFL career. So he's going to get to see, the totality of it, whatever it is. He'll be there every step of the way, which is sweet.
Right.
So, bro, I appreciate you coming on and making the time. This is everything, bro. I loved getting to meet you in person a few months back, and it's good to see you making moves.
No, same here, man. Thanks for having me on.
So tell me a little bit, you grew up in Maryland. Tell me a little bit about what life was like as a youngster, family life, brothers and sisters. What was life like for you as a youngster growing up?
So I grew up, I was born in Washington, D.C. I grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland. And so back in Washington, D.C. and PG County, like in the 80s and 90s, like that's when the crack epidemic hit. That's what it hit DC and Maryland, like that area, the hardest than anywhere in the country. So I grew up in that, where you saw the just the worst of the worst come out. And my mother raised me. I got 2 younger sisters, and my dad at the time wasn't around. I didn't see my dad from like the age of 9 till like I was 26. I never talked to my dad. And so she was a single parent, and then growing up in that time, man, it was probably the craziest, thing that I've seen, even still to this day, where our neighborhood, next to our neighborhood was top 5 murder capital in the country, on the list, like 5 or 10 years straight in that Maryland, Washington, D.C. area. And so for me, I got a taste of like all the bad things of reality really early. And so I always say this, like when you see things, you're around things at that age, it molds you, and certain things happen where you're like, oh, okay, this is real. And so when you see that, man, it puts something different in you that most people don't get a chance to experience.
So was your dad around until age 9 then?
Yeah, my dad was around to age 9, and then my mother had me. I don't even think she was 16 yet. She was like maybe 15 and 6 months or something. Like, she wasn't 16. And so my dad left, went to Atlanta, and I just didn't see him. We didn't even talk. We talked one time my freshman year at the University of Maryland on the phone for about 4 hours. And he basically left the conversation and like, hey, this is my address, this is my number. If you ever want to reach out to me, I'm here. And I didn't see my dad in person until my last game. I invited him out when I was in Buffalo. And so I knew that was going to be my last game. I knew I was retiring, and I just wanted for him to come and see me play one time before I retired. And he drove up, him and his wife drove up from Atlanta to come watch me play. So that was the first time I seen my dad at 26, since I was 9 years old.
So when he left, when you were 9 years old, did you have any siblings at that time?
Yep. I had my younger sister is 2 years younger than me. She was 7. My baby sister wasn't born yet, so it was me, my mom, and my sister. And we were homeless a few different times, man. One time my mother couldn't pay the bills, and they had
What was she
Well,
doing work-wise?
she was like a nurse assistant. She was in the medical field, stuff like that. So she was like bouncing around from job to job. It's hard, you know, when you're a single parent and trying to work and take care of two young kids. And so we lived in the ghetto. We lived in the hood in District Heights, Maryland. This was like one of the worst neighborhoods when I was growing up, called Avalon. Everybody back in Maryland around that time, they knew, if you said Avalon, they knew exactly where it was. And so we were at, I recall one time we were at my babysitter's house. I was, I think 10 or 11 years old. We were at my babysitter's house, me and my sister, and my babysitter had witnessed a murder in the neighborhood. And so the guys that murdered this guy, something happened in the neighborhood, they came by and they threw one of these cocktail bomb, like one of the, you know, ones you light on the bottle, and so they threw that through the glass window, and the whole apartment went up to flames. We got out of there, we ran out, but one little 4-year-old girl burned when I watched her burn. I would say alive. She was asleep. She was taking a nap on the bed, and so she never woke up. And so this was around me. This type of behavior, this type of stuff was around me constantly, all the time. The other time when we lost our home then, because we lived upstairs in the same building. The second time we lost our home is when my mother couldn't pay the bills, and they cut the light, gas, electricity off. I went down the street. I stayed with a friend that night. I got a call like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, like, come home, the house had just burned down. And so my mother had lit a candle, and the candle was on top of my TV in the room, and the candle burned through the TV and ended up burning the home. So we went to go live in a shelter for a little bit. Me, my mom, my sister. Then we lived in the back of the car. Then we lived at some motel, like one of those Motel 6, Motel 8s or something like that. But that was it, man. That happened a lot, like when I was growing up. And so you look back at it, at everything that ended up happening and all the stuff you know going through, and that those type of things end up molding you and kind of giving you that extra layer of skin.
So when your mom was struggling to pay the bills, you weren't at the age where you could work and contribute at that time? You were just a youngster going to school?
Yeah, I was young. The first time the house had burned down, I think I was 10, 11 years old. The second time it burned down, I was 15, 16. Luckily, I was fortunate enough to have my high school football coach who took me in, because he didn't want me to go back to the shelter. He didn't want to bounce around like I was. And he went to my mom and said, hey, could Shawne come and live with me? And my sister went to go live with my grandmother. And so, that's how it was for a while. That was honestly, man, that was the first time that I've ever experienced. This is my freshman to sophomore year in high school. That was my first time ever experienced what normal childhood is supposed to look like. Because when I came home, I didn't have to worry about, there was no food there. I didn't have to worry about whether the lights were going to be cut off or whatever the case was. Like, that was my very first time, like, living a normal kid's life. And so I was, very appreciative of that at the time.
Not to compare your situation to anybody else's, but I've been in some surrounded by situations, particularly in college. I went to the Dominican Republic and was doing some service projects, building homes, building schools over there. And these kids were sharing their testimonies and sharing how, man, I didn't have time to think about what university I want to go to or what dreams I had for my life. Like I was trying to find the next meal. I was trying to be safe that day. I was trying to find a place to stay that night. Did you find at any point in like your childhood, like that was you a little bit, like you weren't thinking about, or was it like, man, I'm going to hustle at this football thing to like make my way out?
Yeah, that was definitely always on my mind for sure. And I think the biggest thing was my high school coach started to notice that I was losing weight, and I was losing weight because we didn't have food. I was coming home, we didn't have, I remember making mayonnaise sandwiches and syrup sandwiches, Spam, like all that stuff. And so I was losing weight, and it kind of started sparking my high school coaches thinking like, hey, what's going on here? And they looked into it, and that's when they finally took me in and helped me, because at that time, and I can't even put a value on how important that was in my life, because it was make or break time. Like, hey, I was going to do this football thing, but how can you do this football thing if you got all this stuff going at home? So like playing football for me at that time, those 2 or 3 hours that I was at practice, it was like a therapy. It was therapy for me that I get a chance to do that and didn't have to worry about anything else.
Was football the only sport you were playing, and that was kind of your dream from a young age?
No, I was playing basketball, man. I was all county, all state, all that stuff. In PG County, Kevin Durant was like right down the street from me. Michael Beasley was right down the street from me. I mean, we had hoopers all over. And, so it was a talent pool. It was crazy. So I played basketball first before I played football. I didn't get into football until I started fouling out in basketball so much. My coaches, my little league coach was like, hey, we got a sport for you. And they put me on a football field, and I was like, okay, that's it. That's my thing.
So I read, obviously, lights out is a big deal for you. Can you kind of tell the backstory, maybe for listeners that don't know, on maybe how you got that nickname?
Yeah, my sophomore year at Frederick Douglass High School in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, I knocked out four players in one game. And I was just starting to get strong. I was just starting to recognize how big, fast, and stronger I was than everybody else. And then I had the intentions of going to like land these big hits. So when all that clicked in, man, I became like, that guy on the field. And so I remember knocking the 4 players out. And after the game, I had 20 students come running up to me, and they said, "Man, you knocked these kids' lights out." And I looked at everybody. I was like, "Yeah, call me lights out," right? Didn't think nothing of it. It just popped out of my mouth. And then the game was on Saturday. I got to school on Monday. Mind you, there's no social media then. It wasn't, somebody saw it on YouTube, on Instagram, nothing like that. I'm walking through the school, and people like are saying, you walk by me like, "Yo, what's up, Lights?" And so everybody just called me Lights for Lights Out. And so I remember going home that day, and I told my mom, I said, "Mom, people are calling me Lights Out. I got to get a Lights Out tattoo on my right forearm." So I had the whole thing sketched out. I had a friend of mine to sketch it out for me and said, "Hey, I want this light switch to show that I'm turning the lights out." I went to my mom, and I opened the door, and I remember telling her, she looked at me dead in my eyes and said, "Boy, get the hell out the room." That was her exact words. I'm not, she's not getting a damn tattoo. And so every day for 2 weeks, I bugged the hell out of her. I said, "Mom, this is gonna be a thing. People know me as Lights Out on the field. This is gonna be like the real thing." So I'm begging her for 2 weeks. Finally, she caved in, and she took me to get this tattoo on my right forearm. And that's how the whole dance started, with me flipping the switch and everything on my right forearm. So that was created from me getting that tattoo.
I know in like professional sports, specifically in like combat sports, like my trainer will talk about, man, you got to have an alter ego. Like when you step on the field, you got to enter like this new mindset. Was that kind of a defining moment for you where you, I don't know, when you stepped on the field, you kind of had a different swagger from that point moving forward?
It was, man, because think about this. When you got a nickname like Lights Out, and it's spreading like wildfire. Like I said, at that time, there's no social media. So it's all like going through the county and the next county and the next county about what I was doing, and people watching film. So everybody's coming to the field. They're gunning for me right away. They know right. They like, "Yo, this guy's not going to have a good game." So every game I knew I had to, like, for those 4 quarters, mentally I had to go somewhere else. I had to take myself somewhere else for those 4 quarters in order to live up to that persona that I carried. Right, so I never could let my guards down. I couldn't go out and let somebody pancake me and block me and have a terrible game. Like, I had to go out there and perform because I was this Lights Out dude. And so, thankfully it was, because I just always had to challenge myself and just be prepared for battle, because I know that people just didn't want to face me.
So this happened sophomore year. So obviously you probably started getting some recruiting attention. What was the recruiting process like for you? Was it challenging? I mean, you ended up staying in state at Maryland. What was that like for you?
So my sophomore year, after that season that I just had, and I was all state, all county, and I won a bunch of accolades or whatever.
Were you just playing linebacker or defensive end?
I'll play wide receiver and tight end too. So they'll tight end, but they would flex me out, and I would play a lot of the flex tight end look, and I'll be one-on-one out there with the cornerback or whoever, and you throw that thing up, I'm going to get it. And so I went to the University of Maryland. They had a summer camp where all the DC, Maryland, Virginia high school players will come to this 3-day camp. And I went to this camp, man, and I completely shredded it up, right? There was not a Division I player that ever went from my high school. We never had a D1 player ever, and so they moved me from the sophomore guys to the junior guys. I started shredding up with the junior guys. Before you know it, I'm over there and hitting drills and all these other with the seniors at this camp. So I'm walking off the field, and all the coaches, head coach, assistant coaches, recruiters, everybody's walking next to me, and they said, "Hey, we're going to come and offer you a scholarship." So they were telling me this my sophomore year. Mind you, I was 6 feet, maybe 6'1", 178 pounds, middle linebacker, an outside linebacker. I never played outside linebacker. I didn't even know how to rush the passer. I never even know how to pass rush until I got to college. I never sacked the quarterback, not once. And so I never, after they offered me, I just verbally committed. And I ended up going to Maryland. I didn't even, I had offers from every big school you can think of, and I just, I never wanted to go anywhere else.
So you committed early to Maryland,
yeah,
before you got all the other offers.
Yeah, I committed as a junior, but when you committed, I had Miami, the one, hey, just come on out here, just meet with us. We know you committed to Maryland, Florida State, at the time was, because we were in the ACC, Maryland was in the ACC. Come on out here. I know you committed to Maryland. Sit down with us. And I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm good where I'm at.
Was it ever a distraction staying in state at Maryland for you?
Yes and no. The reason why I thought it was best because it kept me very grounded, right? So all the people that knew me as a kid, knowing what I'd gone through, all the media knew. Washington Post, Baltimore Sun, you name it. I had high school specials and stuff like that done on me and my upbringing and all the things that I went through. And so I was right in my backyard. So everybody knew me. They knew what I'd been through, so I didn't have to start over. So in a way, for me, it kept me extremely grounded. Because you can't act how are you going to act big time or have this kind of attitude when people saw you and knew you when you were poor.
Was there maybe a person or two that was super influential on getting you to Maryland? And maybe when you got to Maryland and you're like, you feel like you make it. And I remember stepping on campus at Notre Dame and you're like, wow, like I'm about to play like collegiate football against the best. Like this was a dream of mine. Was there any sense of appreciation for somebody who maybe played a big role in you getting to that point?
I would say one of my biggest mentors was LeVar Arrington. So at the time, I played basketball in high school too. I convinced LeVar when he got drafted by the then Redskins. When he got drafted by them, I convinced his younger brother to come play high school basketball with me. And so LeVar heard about this linebacker being in the county. He didn't know anything about me, but it got back to him that they had this linebacker at Douglas that had all this hype and lights out and all this stuff. So LeVar was coming to my games, Arrington. And, at the time, LeVar was probably the biggest name in the metropolitan area. He had just got drafted, I think, number 2 overall. He brought in this persona to the city. He was so big, but he also was a mentor of mine. He was coming to games, so I started hanging out with LeVar. I was, kind of just around him a lot, and I would go to. This is when I started looking at playbooks. So I would go to his hotel when they would have a game, home game. I would go to his hotel, and I would sit in his hotel room the night before the game on a Saturday, and I would watch him. High school kid, man, and I was around all of the guys. So he brought me around like Chris Samuels, who played left tackle there, Stephen Davis. And I'm like, this is the norm for me because, he brought me around everybody. And so it sped up my learning curve. I grew up a lot faster than everybody else around me. And I saw what that life can bring if I kept working. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. I was like, man, LeVar had a G500, a G-Wagon, right? So he would, I'll go with him and stuff. And so I'm sitting around riding this $150,000 Mercedes or whatever it was at the time. And I looked at him one day. I said, hey, I'm going to get me one of these, right? And so coming from where I'm from, you don't have the opportunity to be around that. No professional athlete ever came back to where we're from because nobody ever made it from where we come from. So me having that opportunity to be around LeVar, it opened up my eyes to the possibilities. Now, so in high school, I was like, man, I can do this. I can play on that next level, and I know what I need to do to get there, the work that needs to be put in, and so I never looked back after that.
Did you continue your relationship with him throughout college while you were at Maryland?
School, college. I mean, he's the closest thing that I had to a brother, and somebody who I really look up to and respect even still to this day, because when when you're a kid, you're that young, and you look at somebody, I looked at LeVar like the messiah of linebackers at the time, and he was top 3, 4 whatever linebacker in the league, and so I got a chance to be around and experience that.
So how many years did you end up staying at Maryland before you turned pro?
3. I was there for 3 years.
Was that the plan all along for you?
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. I was just with DeQuell Jackson. Went to DeQuell Jackson. I played with DeQuell Jackson there. We came in the same time. DeQuell played for Cleveland and the Colts. And so DeQuell brought something up that I totally forgot about, and I laugh at it to this day. So, the freshman orientations when you got to go up in the team meeting room and everybody stand up and, hey, I'm such and such, I'm Shawne Merriman, this and this. I stood up in front of everybody and told them, hey, I'm Shawne Merriman, this, I'm going, I'm leaving school early, I'm going first round. This was to the room. Everybody. And so at the time, I seemed like a cocky little shit, of just kind of saying that, but I guess nowadays we would call that manifesting, right? And at the time, I didn't know what manifesting was. I just knew that what my potential was. I knew I was going to work to get there. And I literally, man, I stood up in front of everybody in the room, and I said, hey, I'm Shawne Merriman, from Frederick Douglass High School. I'm going to be here 3 years, leaving early, and I'm going first round. That's what I told them in the middle of the room. And so, obviously the juniors and seniors, they're not going to perceive that as, coming from I think I was 17 at the time, freshman. But that's what I felt. That's how I felt at the time.
What did you learn in maybe as a player and growing as a player during your time there at Maryland? You said your sophomore, junior year in high school, you were 6 foot, 178 pounds. You obviously put on some weight. I think at the combine, you were something like 6'4", 270. So what was the growth process like at Maryland? You obviously came in, maybe you came in big, but most guys come in scrawny. They're putting on weight. You said you never knew how to rush the passer. You obviously got to the league and made a ton of waves in terms of sacking the quarterback. What did you learn at Maryland?
Well, I got into that college program, right? That college, what do you call it? The cafeteria food or whatever. We had unlimited food and then unlimited gym time. And so I walked in at 210. I was 6'3", 210 pounds as a freshman. And then by the end of my freshman year, I was 220. So at that point, I was like, okay, I can have that grown man strength now. I'm starting to come into my own. I'm starting to fill out a little bit. And at the time, I'm 18, right? So you don't technically fill out and get that full grown man strength and look until you're about 21. And so every year, man, I just I got into the weight room and I won, I think 2 or 3 years that I was there, the Iron Terp, where they give the strongest Terp. And mind you, I had Vernon Davis on the team, and we had some dogs, man. And Vernon was probably still to this day the most freakish athlete I've ever played with. And so we went at it every day in practice. Literally every single day, me and Vernon went at it. But ultimately, they got us both better.
So coming out, did you have any sense of where you were going to land, what team you were going to land?
What was weird, because people didn't know whether I was outside linebacker, defensive end, or whatever it was, because I weighed in at the combine at 272, right? So I didn't know what people wanted to play. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to beat the hell up, get big, because I know I can still run. And if I need to go back down to 260 or whatever it is, it's not a big deal. So initially, when I was watching the draft, I thought I would go number 1 to San Fran. And if I didn't go to number 1,
you thought you were going to go 1.
Yeah, I thought I was going to go 1. Yeah. Yeah.
Who ended up going 1 in 05?
Alex Smith. Alex Smith went 1. Okay. Alex Smith. And it's funny. I remember the draft. I went to go visit 3 teams. I went to go visit the Redskins at the time. Now the Commanders. The Commanders. Yeah, I can't keep up with their name now.
Man, that would have been something. You'd have been Maryland through and through.
Yeah, that I'm glad that didn't happen. I'm glad because now you got money. And you don't want to be home. That's the last place you want to be. And I went to Detroit and I went to Dallas. And so actually I thought that I was going to end up at Dallas. So I go to my visit to Dallas, and they flew in about 15 or 20 of their top recruits who they were looking at. Flew us all in, and I'm down in the locker room with everyone else. I get somebody come down and grab me and said, "Hey, Jerry Jones and Bill Parcells want to see you upstairs." And the first thing I started thinking, I'm like, okay, what did I do wrong? Right? Like, that's the first thing I was thinking in my head. Like, I see all these guys down here, they're not coming to get them. Why are they coming to get me? And I'm walking upstairs, and it feels like you're going to your parents or the principal or something. And so I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, oh shit, what did I do? What did I do? And then I went up there to the office. Bill Parcells is sitting at the desk. Jerry Jones is sitting up on the table or whatever. And he said, Shawne, the reason why we brought you up here, because if you're at the 11th pick, which we don't think you're going to be, they thought I was going to go somewhere in the top 5 as well. If you're there, we're going to draft you, right? And so I'm like, okay, all right. And then immediately after that, Bill Parcells looked me square in the eye and said, you know what? When you get here, we're going to work your ass to death. That's the first thing Bill Parcells said to me. And in my head, I'm thinking like, I don't want to come here. Like, Bill Parcells is mean as hell. So I was like, I'm not coming here. Big Tuna was no joke. And so anyway, I left there that day, and I went back and told my family and friends, like, my high school coaches and everybody who asked, I was like, man, I'm going to Dallas. I'm going to Dallas. And I also went, I went to the Chargers too, who told me the same thing that the Dallas told me, right? Say, we don't think you're going to be here on the 12th pick. They also thought I was going somewhere in the top 5. We don't think you're going to be here, but if you are at that 12th pick, we're going to draft you. So draft day, I didn't go to the draft, even though I got invited. I didn't want to go because I rented a big like house or mansion, whatever you want to call it, back in Maryland, because I wanted to be my close friends, family, high school coaches. I just wanted to make it more of like an intimate event. And I'm sitting there doing the draft. They're going through. They start bringing up my name around the 3rd pick, which is Cleveland. And they end up taking Braylon Edwards. They start bringing my name up. So I'm like, okay, all right, I'm in the mix. They brought my name up. Then I didn't go to Cleveland. Then they brought my name up again for, at the time, Redskins, right? I think they had the 9th pick, or 8th or 9th pick. And then Dallas came at the 11th. So, mind you, I've told everybody already that I was going to Dallas because that's what they told me. And so I got family in there. And when you grow up in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, you're only is it Commanders now? I mean, what is it? Like, it's Commanders, right? Yeah. You're either Commanders fan or you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, nothing else. You're either one of the two if you grew up in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. So half my family was happy as hell that I was going to Dallas. They had the caps, the jerseys, they had all this stuff. And so we all sitting there. We thought I was going to Dallas. And then come up 11th pick, and they call it. Normally they call. So I didn't get the call, so I was like, that's weird, right? With the 11th pick of the 2005 draft, Dallas Cowboys select DeMarcus Ware. And so, I mean, the room got silent. It was like silent. Everybody kind of put their caps back in the bag, start folding things up and putting it away. And then my phone rings. And I'm like, okay, the Chargers up. Chargers told me that they were going to draft me. I pick up the phone, and it's like my homeboy, one of my friends. Hey, man, you at the draft? I said, bro, are you really calling me right now on draft? Like, I thought it was the Chargers. And so I hung up the phone. I'm pissed off at him because I'm like, dude, you don't do that. You don't call somebody on draft day. Like, this is the scariest.
Every time that phone rings, you're buzzing, you're jumping. I remember.
You're already a nervous wreck. You're a nervous wreck already. And finally, the phone rang again, and it was Marty Schottenheimer. And Marty Schottenheimer called me, and he asked me what was I ready to be a Charger, and I said, hey, are you guys ready to draft me? Because I'm ready to get to work.
What was that like sliding for you, watching your name fall? I mean, you mentioned you thought you were going to go 1 overall to San Fran, but at least there was that backstop at 11 at Dallas. Do you remember mentally what that felt like for you sitting in that room?
Well, it's exactly why I stayed home and rented, the place and my friends and family, because I always had a little fear of me falling, right? Because I knew I can go anywhere from 1 to 25. I just didn't know. And remember, back in the day, from the first pick to the 25th pick was like 8 hours. Like it was the long draft. It's not what they got now. So it's a long slide from that first pick.
Still a long draft.
It is, man. But back in the day, they used to take, it was 30 minutes between picks at least. And so the last thing I wanted to do was have to sit there in the room with the camera in my face and I'm sliding. So I wasn't worried about sliding out of the first round or anything. I just didn't want to have to sit there and wonder what was going to happen.
So obviously, for listeners that don't know, you get into the league and you absolutely dominate your first 3 years. I think you had 39.5 sacks. You were defensive rookie of the year, 3 consecutive Pro Bowls, 3-time All-Pro. What led to that success, you think, early on in your career? Do you think it goes all the way back to like your upbringing and just having to work hard and having nothing given to you?
Yeah, no, 100%. That was definitely a big part of it. Because out of all the things that was happening to me as a kid when I was growing up, football was always my outlet. That was always, for them 2 hours, whatever I was going through in life, I can like take it out in the field. And so I remember when I was, it was my freshman year at Frederick Douglass High School, and I was asked why I wanted to play football. One of the coaches and somebody else, and I looked them in the eyes as a 15-year-old kid or whatever, and I said, hey, I can do whatever I want to somebody and not go to jail for it. That was like that, because and I was so serious about that because I was going through so much other stuff in life that was my 2-3 hours where I could just go out there and just have a mentality to just be relentless, dominate and get everything off my chest. And I knew I had to. When I got done that last play in practice, I had to go home and worry about whether the lights were going to be on or we had food. And that was a difficult time. So when you start to learn how to play like that, and that's just the only way that you know how to play, it never goes away. And so yeah, that was a big part, man, why I just jumped out in the scene and wanted to make a splash. The other thing is I was upset that, I had 11 teams to pass me up, especially thinking I was going to go number 1. And I remember them doing redoing the mock draft, and then all the mock drafts had me as the first pick, so that was definitely part of it.
So you were obviously having on-field success, but also having off-field success with having a massive contract, being the 12th overall pick. What was that like, obviously growing up with very little and then coming on the scene as you had to be, 20, 21 years old?
I was 20. I was 20 when I was the youngest drafted player ever at the time when I got drafted.
So you're 20 and you get handed, I don't know, at that time, I'm assuming millions of dollars still being the 12th pick. What was that learning process like for you? Like going from having basically nothing to having so much?
It was probably the toughest thing I had to do in my life, period, because I had to learn to say no. Right? There was a lot of people around me that
really talk into this. We talk about this a lot in rookie development, and I think this is a really important thing that you could really shed a lot of light on. What was that learning to say no? I feel like people struggle to say no.
It's the hardest thing to do, and especially to family, right? Because you feel indebted to them, and so when you're like the prize fighter, when you're the prize trophy to come out of a bad situation, everybody around you expect you to be the one to handle everything. A problem goes wrong, Shawne's gonna pay for it. If a family member is about to get put out or evicted, or they don't have food in the house, we can call Shawne. All of their cousins, my little cousins, everybody had Nike gear, Jordan gear, Christmas time. Like you're the only one that ever made it from your circumstances, and so you feel obligated to do these things. And it was easy for me to say no to friends or people I didn't know, but it was extremely hard for me to say no to family, because you grew up with them. And so how can you say no to a family member that got the sheriffs knocking at their door, and if you don't send them rent money, they're going to get put out, and all your family's going to be on the street? And so I had to, and I obviously I helped out and took care, but I got to a point where I was like, enough's enough, right? Enough's enough. And then I realized that I wasn't helping anybody, I was handicapping them. Because if I was paying the rent this month, or I was helping out this month, or when somebody got in a bind this month, a month or two later after that, when they get into another bind, they're going to call again. And then they'll get pissed off because you didn't help them this time, even though you did last time. And so when that started happening repeatedly, I got comfortable with saying no. And I think that was the biggest piece for me, to really separating like all the gifts and the blessings that I've received, money-wise, career-wise, stardom, or whatever you want to call it, to learning to the point of saying no. And that's when everything changed for me.
Did you ever struggle like not bringing any of these distractions onto the field? I know you talked about the football field being a safe haven, but in the media, even in your own experience, like they talk about, oh, this team's got a lot of distractions, got a lot going on. Was that ever something you struggled with? Like putting that aside to focus on football?
Oh, though, honestly, I played. You got to think that those 2 hours, a few hours when I was growing up and I was playing Pee Wee League or club football to high school, my circumstances were bad off the field. So those 2 hours I was on the field was my comfort zone, and where I knew that I can be my best at and didn't have to worry about anything else. So the worst of the worst things could be going on in life, and it never distracted anything I had going on the field. Actually, it helped because it was my therapy, it was my relief to go out there and be able to, have that hour or hour and a half in the gym, have the few hours of practice on the field, and not worry about anything else. That was almost my easiest time when I had to deal with, because I knew that if something else was going wrong in my life, I knew I didn't have to deal with it until I left the field. So on the field, it was never a distraction for me.
So talk about going into year 2 in 2006. You have a monster year in 2005 as a rookie, defensive rookie of the year, and then you get hit with a 4-game suspension. Talk about that period. What happened, and
Yep.
what was that like dealing with that for you?
Yeah, so during the off season between the 2005 and 2006 season, I was working out. You got OTAs, mini camps, the off season workouts or whatever. And at that point I got into MMA and doing other stuff as well. And so I just didn't have energy. So I went to a over the counter supplement shop, the most known in the country, thinking that, hey, if I'm go here and get some stuff to help me, get to my next workout, or I can work out twice a day. And in July, when are we reporting to camp?
July.
It was around sometime in July, and I got tested. Right, this was my 20th test. Since I was getting tested all the time, right? All the time.
Defensive rookie of the year, you're getting tested every week.
They were testing me ridiculously. Every 2 weeks, I was getting tested all the way through my rookie year. And in the first half of the offseason, I think they tested me 4 times. And then the final year right before we came into training camp in July, and I was taking the supplements and stuff that I bought just from over the counter supplement shop or whatever. in July, I tested positive for a derivative of another steroid, right? So it's not a steroid. It's not a banned substance until it gets in your body and then it's created, right? And so go by. So it takes about 4 to 6. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to come back, right? So we play. I had one of my biggest games of my career, and against the Oakland Raiders at the time, now the Las Vegas Raiders. And I had 4 sacks, Monday Night Football. I mean, this 4 or 5 sacks, it was insane, right? Tuesday, we come in Tuesday, and I got a FedEx in my locker. So I'm like, the only time FedEx comes is when you get fined. So I'm like, there's no way I did something in the game. I didn't get flagged. And by the way, they wouldn't have fined me and sent the FedEx the next day anyway. So I get in there, I got a FedEx in my locker, I open it up, and then from the league drug testing thing, whatever, it was a thing, I opened it, I read it, and it was like, you sample, blah, 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 you tested positive for this, this, and this. And we used to play some very bad and mean jokes on each other in the locker room, like put stuff in each other's lockers, fine papers, like make up fake fine stuff. We played jokes on this all the time. So I'm reading this and I'm thinking it's a joke that somebody's like punking me. I thought it was some kind of a joke. So I'm looking around and I'll go to the couple linebackers I was playing with at the time. I said, dude, like, stop playing. I said, whoever did this, I said, my exact words are shit not funny. Like, this is not a joke. Like somebody, and everybody, they looking at me and they're saying, hey, we didn't do anything. I said, seriously? So I took the paper, I leave from my locker, and
did your agent or the coaching or the organization that was the first time you heard of it?
That was the first time. I didn't know of anything. I didn't get any notice. Nothing. That was when I got the FedEx, that was the first time I found out about anything. I take the FedEx, the letter that I got from the league. I go into the training room. I go to James Collins, who our trainer at the time.
Still there.
And still there. James is the man. I said, James, I gave him the letter. I said, I got this from the league. What is this about? And he read it. 30 seconds. He said, hey, I guess you tested positive for a banned substance. And I said, banned substance, like what? What are you talking about? And when I saw the performance enhancing and stuff like that in there, and the steroids, so I'm thinking in my head, and at the time, I don't know anything about steroids. I didn't grow up that way. We don't come from a community where we can we couldn't afford food. How am I going to buy steroids? That type of life. And so I said, okay. I said, James, what do I do? I didn't take anything. He said, hey, have you been taking it? No. And I started thinking back to a month or so earlier when I was working out during the offseason, getting ready for training camp. I was doing my weights during the day with the team. With my trainer, and then I would go do MMA stuff and train or whatever. So I was working out, and that's when I was taking a supplement. I said, okay, what do I do? They said, okay, what have you taken? And I went back, and I had to send all this stuff in. So UCLA has a lab where they test supplements, they test a bunch of stuff, whatever. So my attorney and my agent, they said, hey, what have you been taking? Send everything in to find out which one is banned and which one you can't take. So anyway, the supplement came back, and I sent it to the NFL. I said, hey, this is what I've been taking. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Like, it don't say steroids on it. It don't say performance enhancing. It's this long, scientific name that I don't know, but it happened to be on the NFL banned substance list. And I said, what do I do? Can you guys I was like, here, find me. Take the money, take the money. I'm telling you that this is what I was taking. This is what I was doing. And NFL's straightforward. They straight up told me, they said, hey, whatever you do, whatever you put in your body is on you, right? You could have called in. I said, guys, you're right, but how am I supposed to know what this long name? I mean, it's on the back of a supplement. They said, doesn't matter. You took it. Your fault. And so that's when the suspension came in. Did they
have like the NSF certification back then? You know how it's got to have the NSF on it now?
Oh, see, the NFL back then, there were like 3 supplements, 3 companies total that was approved. Like 3 total. And so, you know, and they wasn't really, in my opinion, they wasn't great products. They wasn't like really good. It was just they somehow passed the test or whatever to have that stamp of approval through the NFL. But in my opinion, they wasn't good supplements. And so I was crushed, man. I was like, because how do you? I mean, and I was sitting back, man. It was so big at the time. I was at the height of my career or close to it. And I remember sitting back when I got home, and I tried to go home, and there were reporters jumping out of my bushes behind my side of my house, jumping out of cars. I mean, helicopters, everything. And so I was like, holy shit, what's going on? And I ended up actually going to stay at one of the players' house, Stephen Cooper. I was like, dude, you gotta come. I gotta come stay there because I can't even go home. There's people camping out at my house, and so I stayed there, and then I did the press conference, and then I took the suspension. And so during that time when I took my suspension, Hurricane Katrina happened. It was the same time, and so the first week and a half of my suspension, I went to New Orleans, and I was helping like rebuild homes and clean out old refrigerators from the hurricane and helping people get back on their feet. So, it sucked, man, because I got put in that category of, someone who was trying to cheat the system, and I wasn't. It just, I'm still in shape right now. I don't look too far off from back, 15 years ago. I mean, it just, I work out all the time. I take really good care of my body, and it was one of those things that it was like so discrediting. It was so discrediting from all the work that I've done to somebody saying, hey, this guy's only good because of this, or he had, and I got really suspended during the off season. I didn't test positive for anything during the season. And Roger Goodell, the commissioner, he tried to come out and back me up and show that, man, this dude was tested 20 times in this past year. So it's very unlikely that I was trying to cheat the system. It wasn't like, oh, they just randomly test me one time I got caught. No, I knew that I was getting tested every few weeks. I just knew that was coming.
So was it, you said you played that first game, Monday Night Football, had 4 or 5 sacks. So was your suspension 2, 3, 4, and 5, games 2, 3, 4, and 5?
No, what we did was I appealed it until we found out, because it took some time to get back the supplement from UCLA, get the word back from the NFL, that this was the particular supplement that got me suspended. And I wanted to see if they were going to be lenient and saying, hey, like, guys, I'm not trying to beat the system. Here it is. Like, here, like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I didn't do anything on purpose. Here it is. So we appealed it thinking that the sample B possibly was going to come back or something like that, and I was fine. Or the NFL is going to come back and say, hey, since you're honest with us, you sent us a supplement, we know what you did, that they will work out something for me. Would I be suspended less, or I just paid a fine, or whatever it was. So anyway, by the time the appeal failed, we actually dropped the appeal, and then I took my suspension, I think 2 or 3 games later after that.
And you still had 17 sacks that season, which led the NFL, right?
Yeah.
On less than 4 games than everybody else.
Yeah.
So you were just flat out dominating.
I think for me, man, I was really pissed off when I came back, because
I bet
I was just pissed, man. Because everything I did was up to that point was discredited, right? And then so you got guys out here who are really cheating the system, were trying to get over, and you just get thrown right into it with them, right? So it's like, this guy's this big, this strong, this fast for this reason. And so I wanted to make it a point when I came back to have more sacks when I came back than I did before I left, right? And I think I walked out with 7 sacks or 6, 7 sacks before I got suspended, and I got 10 or 11 more when I came back in those 6 games or whatever it was, 8 games.
So obviously that was an iconic season for you, and you followed it up with another great season. But then you started kind of having like some injuries and whatnot. Was that your first time? I want to say it was like 2008 when you had the knee deal. Was that your first time really having an injury?
Anything that major, yeah. And so what happened was we were playing the Tennessee Titans in 2007, and I was targeted. By them for what they perceived to be a dirty play, a hit on Vince Young, which it wasn't. You know, anybody go back and look at that game in 2007, and I don't normally talk about this because I'm like, you hate bringing up old stuff, or like, you know, for me, like when things happen, okay, cool, you get over it, you move on, and I just have that attitude about everything. But I was targeted, and then I blew my knee out. I tore my PCL and LCL that game, and so when I got hit, I felt a big pop in my knee, and I didn't know what the hell it was because at the time, mind you, I've never been injured, I've never been hurt, and so I got up, I heard the pop, didn't think nothing of it. And I started walking. I tried to put my foot in the ground. My knee and my leg was just wobbling. I couldn't really stand on it. So with your LCL and PCL, it's like the reverse of your ACL, right? So your ACL stops your knee from going forward. I tore everything to stop your knee from going back. And so I remember trying to line up and play another play, and literally I just couldn't put my foot in the ground. And I went over to James again and Damon at the time, and I said, guys, like something's going on with my knee. I don't know what it is. I've never had a knee injury at this capacity ever. So anyway, got x-rays, MRIs after that game, and they told me what happened. I missed 1 or 2 games after that. I came back and finished the season because in 2007, we actually had a run to get a ring, right? We played an AFC Championship game that year. So the last 4 games and then the playoffs, I played with a torn PCL and LCL.
And you just braced up?
Braced up. I was on everything, felt pain-wise, and it was the most excruciating pain, even to this day, that I've ever dealt with, because my knee was just sliding back and forth, and there was nothing I could do about it. So they braced it up, taped it up, and made it as stable as they possibly could, so I can just go out there and play. And I played in the AFC Championship game like that. I had a couple sacks in the AFC Championship game with 1 or 2 forced fumbles. This is all on the torn PCL and LCL. My knee was shattered. And so that's kind of what happened.
Looking back, playing on that, do you think that had any like long-term repercussions for your knee?
Yes and no. Yes and no. What, if I knew what I knew now, I would have played through it still, because I would have played in order to possibly get a ring. But what I would have done is get the surgery done right after the season. Like right away, I would have got it done. The problem is that type of surgery was a 6 to 9 month deal. So when I had the surgery, it was guaranteed I was gonna miss half of the next season or close to it. And I didn't want to miss any time. And so if I can take anything back now, I would have just shut it down, got the surgery, missed the 6-8 games, whatever it ended up being, in order to have better long-term health. And then after that, you know the compensation rule, right? So I'm sitting around, you run around on a bum knee, you're working out during the off season on a bum knee, you're putting more strain on your right side, and ultimately what happened was I ended up tearing my right Achilles, on my opposite leg. And so the knee was fine when I came back from. It was the Achilles that really took away, what I had.
It's really interesting to see how injuries lead to other injuries within your body. You start compensating, and you see it all the time. Like, guy doesn't have the same ankle flexion. Oh, he starts having knee problems or hip problems on the other side. And it's really fascinating to see that. Do you feel like the injuries for you are what caused like the decrease in production for you over the last, 4 or 5 years of your career?
100%. There's no doubt about it. What I had, man, I was, at 6'4", 260-something pounds. I just had raw, pure explosion off of the line of scrimmage, right? So first and foremost, and I'll tell any pass rusher this, your number one thing is get off an explosion. You can set anything else up after that. If your get off is nice, you can set up any pass rush move that you absolutely want to. And that's what I had. I had a burst off the line of scrimmage, and I knew that I had most tackles and tight ends or whoever tried to stand and block me beat just off of that alone. And so when that happened, the knee, I was fine. The knee, I still pretty much had about 90, 95% of my explosion after the knee. The Achilles, I lost half of my explosion after that, and I couldn't go by anybody anymore. I couldn't beat them around the corner, and that ultimately is what kind of shortened my career.
So, do you remember that moment you retired? I have a quote. I think you said when you retired. You said, "I retire today not because I don't feel I can go out there and still play the game at a very high level. I'm retiring because I retire on my own terms and leave while I know I can still physically play the game." A lot of guys will say in the locker room, like, "I'm playing till the wheels fall off." For you, like, what ultimately led to that decision to step away from the NFL?
One of the hardest things that I had to deal with in my playing career is I got released from the Chargers, which I knew was coming. I just had too many back-to-back injuries. I knew the business side of it was coming. But when I got released by the Buffalo Bills 2 weeks before training camp had ended, or 2 weeks before the first game of the season, and so during that time when I got released, it was difficult for me to deal with because teams wasn't calling. And I was like, I went 3 or 4 weeks before one team, so I didn't get a call until like after week 2. And so 3 weeks gone by, and I didn't get a call from anybody. So I went to Florida. I was training down at with Pete Bomarito in Sunny Isles in Florida. And so just getting ready for a team to call, and like 3 weeks go by, and I'm still down there. I'm like, nobody? Like, 30 out of 32 teams, not one team is going to call. And so, and I'm calling my agent. I'm like, hey, I'm pissed off. Are you working? Like, what's going on? I'm like, are you whatever? And he's like, no, just nobody. And so that was really hard for me to deal with because I was waiting for somebody to call me. And in my head, I'm thinking like, man, I can contribute to any one of these teams. All 32 teams, they can use me on their roster, in the locker room, and all these other things. And so it was really hard to deal with. And so when I did get the call back to go back to Buffalo, I think week 4 or 5, I came back in and I had to earn my starting position back. And so I did. In practice, I ran down on scout team kickoff. I was doing everything. I was getting back into the lineup. They didn't ask me to do it, but I did it, because I wanted to get back into it. I would get my body back in shape. I just came back off of Achilles repair. I had a full Achilles repair. I was about 8 or 9 months removed from that. So I was trying to get back into the flow, and I was willing to do anything to get back in the lineup, make sure I was a starter, which I ultimately did and finished up my career strong there. But at the end of the season, they had let go all the coaches. Chan Gailey, everybody. They cleaned house. Everybody was there. And I said, you know what? I'm done. That's it. I'm not going to, wait for another staff to come in here and tell me if they want me in a building or not. I have other things to do. I had some TV jobs. I went straight to NFL Network. I had my Lights Out clothing line that I was building, my Lights Out brand that I was building in general. And so I started to weigh my options of somebody having me to come back and play for minimum wage, which nothing wrong with that. If you can physically play and somebody offer you minimum wage, go back and I do believe that. Play until the wheels fall off if you don't have anything else going on. And I started to literally weigh my options on what I could do on TV. I'd end up shooting like a couple movies then. The next year or two, I started working with WWE, doing stuff with them on the broadcasting side, and also I did a pay-per-view event with WWE. So I had other things, and so I started to just saying, you know what, this is it for me. I did everything I could physically on the field. I played with some of the best players in the history of the game, and this was it for me. There was nothing else I had left to do on the field.
I feel like for a lot of guys, retirement's super difficult because they don't know. Football is all they've known for such a long period of time, and then they're stepping into a season of unknown. It sounds like for you knew what you wanted to do post-football.
I got a Lights Out tattoo at 16, man. Like, I knew from day one what I wanted to do, and I knew that Lights Out was much bigger than what I did on the field. I knew it was a brand. I knew it was something that was going to be nationally and internationally recognized, and it was all about, okay, now I need to focus doing that. I need to take this same mindset, the same attitude, the same approach I did to get to where I was on the football field every day and put it into Lights Out and what I'm trying to build. And I said, as long as I do that, I'm going to be successful at whatever I do.
So among the many things you've got going, you found Lights Out MMA. I guess going back to 2006 when you started doing MMA, when did you first, I guess, get interested in that? Was that something you just did for like workout reasons and kind of fell in love with, or did you like it from your childhood?
Yeah, so I grew up, I got uncles that are professional boxers. So we grew up boxing. In my neighborhood, where I grew up at, you had to fight. If there was no ifs, ands, or buts. My mother made me fight. If there was somebody picking on me, she would walk me outside herself and point them out and say where they at, and she would tell me to square up on them and y'all handle business. That was my mom. That was my family in general. And so that was the way that I just learned how to fight. Now, end of my 2005 season, beginning of 2000, in that off season, Jay Glazer over at Fox Sports, he said, "Yeah, I know you grew up boxing, but have you tried MMA? I think it'll help out your football." And I said, "Oh yeah, how so?" And he said, "Well, using your hands a lot more as an outside linebacker, being able to open your hips and turn around those corners, and pummeling, using somebody else's body weight. So it was all these things that was going to benefit me on the football field." And I said, if that's the case, sign me up, right? Put me in. The very next day, he sent me an address to come meet him. So I pulled up at this gym. I walk in. Jay Glazer's on the right. Randy Couture's on the left. And so I'm sitting there thinking in my head, and I don't know what the game plan is or whatever. I'm thinking he's setting me up to fight Randy Couture that day. And so in my head, I didn't tell him this, but in my head, I'm thinking like, dude, you lost your damn mind. I'm not fighting Randy Couture. Like, yeah, right. And he said, no, he was like, no. He's going to show you how to grapple and just do some hand work, some pad work, and open up your hips and using your body weight and all these other great things, which I ended up learning that was very beneficial for my football career, because the following year I came out and led the league in sacks. I learned how to use my hands, and in the fourth quarter when everyone's tired, I'm bouncing around because there was nothing like that MMA training. It was, I mean, if a guy is great at jiu-jitsu and he's sitting there and he's hovering tight on you and you feel him on top of you, and this is your second 5-minute round and you got to get this guy off and get out of your way and get back to your feet, there was nothing more tiring than that. So I walked into this 06 season just feeling like a different player. And then that's how I kind of stuck with the MMA space for every all season since then, every year.
My brother started doing jiu-jitsu after he kind of stepped away from football and said he remembers walking in there. He's like, man, I'm a good athlete. I'm strong, man. I'm gonna be all right doing this. And he says he started rolling with these guys and got humbled so quickly. Like, he's trying to brute strength these guys, and these guys are like effectively like using their energy, conserving their energy. And he said he literally got exhausted in like the first minute or two, and then they just submit him.
I had a wrestler. He was a D2 or Division I AA or D2. He was a wrestling champion, 185 pounds, 190 pounds max. Got me on the ground and I couldn't get up. And I could not get up. And I was sitting there thinking in my head, I'm like, I'm stronger than this dude. I'm bigger than this guy. I'm more explosive, all these things. And I can't get up off of the damn ground. And so I'm beat. So I'm leaving there, and he kicked my ass the next day. So I finally asked him, I said, hey, why can't I get up? And so he started showing me how to position my hands, how to use his head, push his head away, get my hips out from under there, kick him off. So all these things I started to learn jiu-jitsu wise that I fell in love with, just the process of it. And it's still today, it's still one of the things I live by.
I love watching the UFC and there's so many elements to the craft that just make it such like an unbelievable sport to watch. You've obviously rolled out this Lights Out MMA. What are you looking to do there? I guess, what has that been like for you building that out? Obviously you participate yourself in like combat sports. What are you doing with Lights Out MMA? Are you just recruiting fighters and kind of creating your own league? What are you guys doing there?
Yeah, well, think of us as college football to the pros. I mean, UFC being like the NFL, and we're college football. And so guys need fights, and you need to climb up and get in the cage and have an opportunity. And so we partnered with Fubo TV and Fubo Sports. So all of our fights are on Fubo. And they've been a great partner for us so far because, Fubo's growing fast. They got a lot of great content and shows and stuff like that on it, and then we fit in the mix. Actually, right now, I think we're third or fourth most watched program for them, for Fubo. And it's different, man, when you run an organization. You kind of looking around, and I remember launching this in 2018, and you got 30, 40 employees like going around, everybody setting up chairs, setting up lights, setting up cameras, satellite trucks in the back, commentators, broadcasters, guys rigging systems. And I remember the first time sitting down looking at all this shit, I'm like, what the did I do? It's like, it was kind of one of them oh shit moments, like, yo, I actually have like a whole organization. And it's fun being on this side because, for one, I like promoting the fighters. I think that I bring a different set of eyeballs to this sport. I have a great transitional story behind it because I've been around it for so long. And so for me, especially when you're done. See, one thing you're gonna miss when you're done is being around the guys, being around the locker room, all these different crazy personalities, guys from the country, guys from the city, guys that's single, guys that's married, guys with kids, guys with no kids, and somehow, some way, for them certain hours you guys are together during that day, you all become brothers. Everybody's the same. Everybody's accepted no matter where you're from. And then also you miss the arguments, the jokes, the combativeness, the going back and forth with everything. And then so I go back into the gym now with these fighters. I get that, you walk in and guys might be like ready to fight because they're talking so much stuff back and forth or joking about somebody's family or girlfriend. Or saying that, hey, somebody got knocked out in that last fight and somebody get mad. So for me, I like to be around that. For me, it keeps me motivated, keeps me young, and then also for me to get a chance to train with some of these guys who are preparing for a fight, it keeps me disciplined. So that it's been like a real joy, man. Like I actually have a passion and love this side of the business, and then also still get a chance to be around the fighters.
The life of a fighter seems, from the outside in, it seems like a really tough path to make it. And then when these guys make it, very few of them, I feel like the payout and the money just isn't even there in the UFC. Are you guys, is it purely experience, or are you guys able to pay any fighters? And what do you, I guess, in your opinion, since you're in the business, does the UFC need to do differently to, like, I don't know, so fighters can get more money? I feel like it's a very combative sport that takes a massive toll on your body, and guys and girls are walking away with not a ton of money to show for it.
Yeah, definitely there needs to be something in place where the fighters get more, whether it's healthcare, whether it's, more, whatever. But let's be honest, go ask anybody in any job, they'll always tell you that they deserve more, right? Everybody does. Yeah. And this is from all walks of life, no matter what field you're in. Go ask your secretary, go ask your door managers, security guards, hey, do you think you should be getting more money? They will all tell you, yeah, well, I do, right? So that's one thing. Two, and I like to use this example, and I can use this well because I experienced it. 10, 15 years ago, NFL players was complaining about the same thing, right? Complaining about the same thing. Why does NBA get this guaranteed money, or baseball get this guaranteed money, and all this other stuff? And so guess what? Patrick Mahomes just signed a $500 million deal. Dak Prescott is making $40+ million a year. So it's going to get there. And so while the fighters and everybody's complaining, they got to understand that it will get there. The sport is really, MMA has only really been mainstream for about 15 years, right? Football's been around for 60+. NBA's been around for 70+. Baseball's been around forever. Hockey's been around forever. And so when you look at the time that these other leagues and sports been around, MMA is getting there, right? I mean, Conor McGregor is getting 7 figures a fight. John Jones is getting 7 figures a fight. They got Israel Adesanya just got, a big deal. He's getting probably 7 figures a fight or close to it now, whatever. And so the money's getting there. Guess what? If you're making $1 million+ a fight, you're fighting twice a year, that's $2 million+ a year. That's better than a lot of, 99% of this country. So yes, 100% they should be getting more, but just how much more? How do you work that? What does that look like? And so, yeah, I mean, I love using that analogy because I remember when I played, I see some of these guys getting paid even now that I feel like I can come in and do that right now, and they're getting $10 million a year. And so I never made that type of money, but I don't sit back and say, oh man, these guys making money, I should have made more. No, it's all going to, at some point in time, get there.
It seems like too, the guys and gals that get the most money in MMA, they're also like entertainers of sorts. Like people just love to engage with them. Like they're very, I don't want to say like flamboyant, but they know, you just enjoy seeing them when the camera's on them, like after the fight. Like they know how to interact. And is that something like you try to teach your fighters that's maybe outside of their comfort zone? Like, hey man, you got to have a brand of yourself as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you create a following, you sell tickets, you get more money. That's ultimately what it comes down to. You sell tickets, you sell pay-per-views, you will get more money. Some people have that, and I want to take Conor McGregor and those type of guys because he's such a mega superstar, and say take him out of the equation. But you got some other guys with great personalities, really good on social media. They sell tickets and people come to see them fight. And so when you do that, you're going to make money. And so I encourage guys to sell yourself. You're in a prize fighting sport. You're in an individual sport. That's one thing I always wish that I got an opportunity to do, because you can sell yourself all day long. Talk trash, big up, promote your brand, do whatever you want, be creative, and you sell tickets, you sell pay-per-views, you're gonna get paid. And if you don't, then you're not gonna ever see the money that some of these other guys can do, even if you are possibly a better fighter.
I guess in closing here, I appreciate you taking the time. You also recently started the Lights Out Agency, where you guys are doing life insurance agency, and you guys are one of the faster growing agencies. What made you start that, and what are you guys doing with that?
Well,
people check that out.
Yeah, for me, this happened during the pandemic. So the TV shows, I couldn't go in studio, couldn't work. Everything shut down during the pandemic. The league is shut down. We can't do anything. So I'm sitting around, and one of my best friends are part of this company called Family First Life. So he brought it to me and said, hey man, I'm part of this company, Family First Life. It's life insurance. And the first thing I laughed. I said, are you really trying to sell me to be a life insurance agent right now? He said, yeah. And there's great money in it, and you're helping a lot of people. You're protecting a lot of families. So I said no for 3-4 months. And then we're still in the pandemic. And I said, okay, I can't sit around. So I sat around for 2 weeks. I got my my life insurance license, and now 200 agents later in the Lights Out Agency under Family First Life, it makes us one of the fastest growing agencies in the country.
That's awesome, man. Keep up your grind, bro. I appreciate you coming on, man. Your story's inspirational. I know I took a lot from it. I'm sure our listeners will too.
Cool, bro. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, dude.
All right, Shawne. Appreciate you, bro.